Welcome everyone, I'm the captain, Ross Memphis Pamber. With me as always is my friend and the co-host, the president, Lawrence Gervais. We're broadcasting from Calgary, Region 3 of the Métis Nation of Alberta, part of the historic Métis Nation homeland. We would also like to acknowledge these lands are the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Sixica, Kainai, Pakani, Tsutsina, and Stoney Nakoda, with whom we share this land on the basis of our historical and ongoing relationships. We would like to thank all of our First Nation friends, the Métis settlements, and to all of our Métis brothers and sisters and families. We'd like to give thanks to our elders for their guidance and to Mother Earth for the time she allows us to be here and use and share her bounty. And now, folks, from the captain and the president, let's get the wheel squeaking. Lawrence, here we are again on the squeaking wheel. This time, going back to some of the roots that we had previously where you and I are not sitting beside each other. We've had some pretty good success lately on some of the conversations we've had with the show that we're working on. We've been to the vaccine clinics and been able to connect, though it hasn't been as glamorous when we're sitting there with the masks clearly in front of our faces, but it was nice. So though we do have to do this occasionally, folks, here you are again. Here we are with you, and we're enjoying the experience. With me, as always, as I pointed out, my very good friend, the co-host, the president, Lawrence Gervais. Folks, I'm Ross Memphis Pamber. I represent the CEO, I'm the CEO of the Memphis Group. Boy, you'd think I'd have that down after having said it nearly 50 times on our show. And here we are to connect. I'm one of the co-hosts of the Squeaky Wheel, and I always appreciate our weekly conversations from a Métis perspective. Folks, I want to say thank you for logging in, connecting with us. Thank you for following our conversations about the vaccine clinics. Thank you to our friends at the Aboriginal Friendship Center, at the our family friends, our Métis families, the First Nations friends who connect with us, the vaccine clinic that we've been at for the last little while. I know Lawrence will talk a little bit more about that as our show goes on, especially as we do a little shout out to the wonderful medical director, Dr. Samanani, who has spent such great time with us. And folks, that'll come on the show here in a little bit. But Lawrence, here we are one more time, though we're still in the midst of the stages in southern Alberta as we're moving through, as the whole province is moving through. And there's a light at the end of the tunnel. But let's talk a little bit about the Kenney government and some of the challenges that they've faced, as well as, you know, how we want to try and move forward in our conversation with our citizens, with the Indigenous community about the vaccines and the stages of rollout. Because we're in stage 1 right now, and it's very short order here. We're going to be in stage 2, where there's a little bit more allowance.
Yeah, I mean, we're pretty excited about where we're headed, and certainly when we start to open up on June 10th. But all shout outs to Okaki and Sixica Health Services and the Aboriginal Friendship Center at Calgary and the Homeless Foundation. I mean, there's a long list of partners, but definitely looking into the vaccination clinic. And now we have an outreach mobile clinic that is heading out to the most vulnerable people who are out there, temporary foreign workers, to people who are homeless, to people who don't, quite have the access to get to the clinic. So we're pretty excited about this mobile unit that's going to be going straight to them. But that's, a huge announcement and accolades to certainly Tyler Wade and Dr. Samanani and Shane Gauthier.
Yeah, they were so welcoming. And Lawrence, as we were having a little conversation earlier before we got a chance to hit record, I was there yesterday, and all of the staff and the volunteers at the Okaki, from the first young gentleman who, when I pulled up, who was so polite, who was so considerate, who was in such a positive spirit. And they move people through with kindness, gentleness, move you on to the next person. You're parked. They come to get you. I know we've talked a little bit about this before, but I can't say thank you enough, right? Shane Gauthier was down there that day. I got a chance to say hi to him. folks, was my second shot, Moderna. I'm a little tired today. My shoulder's a little sore. I feel as though I am doing my part. I am respectful of the provincial requirements. yeah, the first shot I got with AZ, I don't think I really felt sort of this tired, a little bit worn down, but we're in part of the process. But I can tell you, there was all sorts of culture that was there. There's a lot of awareness that's made available at the Okaki vaccination clinic, but the kindness of the people. And one of the things that was actually fabulous that I don't think was there last time when we were shooting our conversation, Lawrence, was in front of each of the staff members is a little brief history of who they are, maybe their background, where they come from. And because they're wearing masks, you get to see their whole face in the picture. And it was so warming. And after you've had your shot and you get to sit and you get a peaceful place, it is done very respectfully, and with consideration for all. So again, another shout out. I cannot say thank you enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that you're living and you're on your feet today. And nothing's really happened to you. But if you hear voices coming from your arm, it's probably Russians or the microchip speaking to you. But no, I'm really glad you got it. Now we can look at more maskless connection every now and then. But certainly, at least we know we're protected. So,
well, I miss the hugs. I miss the handshakes. I miss the pat on the back and the saying hello to somebody. The cultural connection that is very predominant in the Métis gatherings. I miss that.
But don't worry, I'll just be shaking your hand. I'm not into hugs or anything.
Lawrence,
like that,
you won't be able to get away when I grab onto you with a big bear hug. As soon as they allow for that, then that's exactly the first thing I'm going to do. Which, you have a responsibility when it comes to the expectations. Boy, this week, I'm unsure the Kenney government, right? There they were in the Sky Palace, which K is probably an appropriate term, but at first he was defending, the premier was defending the fact that, well, this is allowed. Yeah, but I also know that there's just as many people that will look. If they could have a measuring tape, they would try to determine how close people are. Now, Kenney did apologize, saying, well, if we look at it from this angle, we could, a couple of the people of their party may have been a little bit too close. The opposition in any situation, the anti-vaxxers, they are going to be ruthless. So I'm not defending him. I'm not promoting him when it comes to that. I think when we set down, responsible rules, they should be trying to meet that at the absolute highest standard.
Yeah.
And have somebody who's in charge of that.
Yeah, Kenney's, sometimes a bit of a roller coaster for me sometimes. But, I'm still waiting for a significant response about the 215 children in Kamloops from Kenney. Not the usual response of, let's keep all the McDonald's statues around and all those things. And I think what's more appropriate is the time that's allotted to these families and the impacts that are at home and the emotions that are running high, certainly in our family too, because residential schools affected that. So, it was kind of untimely a little bit to be commenting about the McDonald's statues at this time, but that's up to him. I mean, really, at the end of the day, what he wants.
I understand the conversation or the statement, because if all of a sudden we rush out there and start destroying all statues, where does it end? So, okay, I get that. But yes, you have to acknowledge where this anger comes from. And you and I get to talk to a lot of people. And even on the radio stations that I listen to, and they clearly have been identifying this week, it is not typical of their groups, their talk show, their hosts to get into a very challenging conversation, but they acknowledge and say they need to learn, they need to understand, and it cannot be diminished. It can't be swept under the rug. We need to have frank conversation, and apologies need to be made.
Yeah.
So we often ask ourselves, just because you and I talk about it, oh, well, this is just what we do. We're having conversation from a Métis perspective. But no, I'm hearing that conversation being in places that it's not traditionally discussed. But clearly, this resonated. These 215 children, I pray, have resonated. And it's very sad that, this was what happens. And now we begin the journey of a better understanding of what role the Catholic Church played, what role people in the government played. But it's not fair to just suggest these are different times. Inhumanity is still inhumanity, but it needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and the families need to, they need to be grieved and at least understanding that they need to go through the grieving process. But you see, in those communities specifically, they don't know the identity of these children, and once they do, because they're working on ways to uncover that, certainly, the apologies that were sort of not being said right now, well, all eyes will be on them eventually. And certainly the schools here in Alberta, there was 25 of them, and Red Deer Industrial School in St. Albert, they're looking at that as a possible, where Poundmaker is right now, they're looking at that as a possible place for another site. So this stuff will come out in Alberta also, and the Premier probably is aware of that, I'm sure, and certainly will have a better response when that time comes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's necessarily that we're expecting him to apologize for his role. No. We're expecting him to say, we as government, as a nation, as citizens, we have to apologize that this ever happened. And how do we explore it in a respectful way for the tragedies for all of these families?
Yeah.
Right. So you're in our conversation, Lawrence, is our connection in a new method with our community, with our listeners, with our subscribers who then share the conversation. And we, I think, have a responsibility. There is a lot of people out there who, in our cancel culture today, in the conversations we've had before about, well, is it just better to say nothing? Well, if you say nothing, are you just burying your head in the sand? So folks, these are hard conversations. I often make the comment that I don't presume to understand all of it, but I'm here. And when people send us questions and want to have discussion on different aspects of Métis culture and Indigenous culture and understanding, folks, we're learning right along with you, and your skill set, your involvement, all of the presentations you do, Lawrence, thank you for helping share that conversation with our citizens. Because if you weren't doing it, well, I'm hoping the next person is trying to pick up that chalice, pick up that reign, pick up that responsibility, and hopefully we're learning as we move forward.
Yes, for sure. And certainly communicating, where the Métis are at. That's what our attempts will be, and we'll continue to do so. And we'll drive the ship as far as we can, and certainly bringing a Métis viewpoint on what we see as inexplainable things that happen. When we talk about our history and they talk about the Riel Rebellion, well, to us it was the Northwest Resistance, and it had a little more of a better name to it than what other people kind of call it. And without those teachings, they just continue to do so, right? So, our hope is that we'll change at least some of the attitudes out there. And if not, well, then that's life.
You're right. We're not going to change attitudes, but if we don't try to start changing the negative attitudes right now, then, as I always comment, the messages that are coming down from our elders now that there's a lot more acceptance and towards the fact that they are becoming more aware that they can share their heritage. They don't need to hide it. That message that then goes to our youth that says, oh, my elders and our responsible business people and our political leaders are talking about this. They're talking in a way that's proud. As youth, they can be proud. Then the change will continue to occur. So, I say it all the time, folks, make sure you have these conversations with your family. Make sure that you share that conversation with the youth. And if you don't know the answer, that's okay. It's okay to say, I don't know enough about this, but let's look into it together. Or let's subscribe to the Squeaky Wheel and at least hear some of their opinions and their sort of suggestions on places where we can go and find it. Which I guess is a plug for us, Lawrence. Folks, when you have those questions, you make sure you email us, tsw@metis3.org. Thank you for subscribing. When you listen to us on YouTube, make sure you click that little red box that says subscribe. It means a lot when we talk to our producers, when we talk to the support crew behind us, that we are having more people who are listening. Lawrence, as you know, this week, I joined LinkedIn. Yeah. Folks, if you can imagine that, though I have websites and all that kind of stuff, this is the next step. I would not say that I was trying to ignore it, but I came to think if our listeners, if the people within my satellite monitoring environmental community need to validate or find me, the LinkedIn is like the new Yellow Pages.
Well, it's about 8 years old, but yeah, it's definitely.
Okay, sorry. Okay. It's the 8 year ago start of the Yellow Pages. So I know you tease me, and folks, you're all welcome to tease me because, yes, I it wasn't necessary for validation before. If people want to reach me, they usually find me either through metis3.org website, through my memphisgroup.ca website. There's always a way to find me, but this became hey, those agencies that I work with. And I want to connect with the elders out there. I want to connect with our youth. And I got to admit, though there are different, platforms out there for connecting with youth, this is the start for me.
Well, so, the good thing about LinkedIn is the access, because now you can message CEOs and presidents of companies quite easily. You don't have to call an office, talk to a secretary, send them an email that they might ignore. There's a percent of that. You definitely go directly to them, and you make pretty significant contacts very quickly. And then of course promoting what you're doing for a business, right? Well,
and I guess all of my LinkedIn requests to Donald Trump have gone unanswered, but I assume he's been kicked off this platform just like all of the other ones where he's been banned.
If you're brand new to LinkedIn, you will see QAnon stuff. You'll see support for Trump. You'll see all that stuff. Oh, yeah.
I guess it's a slippery slope, the slide that I've gotten on. And hopefully that I can just turn it off at the end of the night and not think about it until the next day. But let's talk about some of the other things that are happening in our community. All of the advisories are starting to come out that we see every summer. And it's funny, it almost seems silly that you need a reminder that says, don't forget, it does get warm, so don't leave your kids in the car. Don't leave your dogs in the car. Don't leave your cats in the car. Don't leave anything in the car. I think we all get scatterbrained. We all forget, but you can almost set your watch in this province. I think in all provinces that you're going to get these reminders. Remember, the river flows a lot faster, folks. If you're going to be just blindly walking down the pathway and just manage to fall into the water, it moves very quickly, right? These are the advisories that are coming out.
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know what goes on in people's heads. I mean, maybe there should be a course in school where they teach about vehicle safety or at least people understanding what being in a sauna or a sweat lodge is like. They'll probably realize, oh yeah, probably not a good idea to leave your pet or even your child in a vehicle at plus 25 and above, right? So,
yeah. And I know that there's apps coming out there. I know that there are new tools that are coming out there. The vehicles have these reminders, or if they see movement, the car, like in your vehicle, like a sensor, it'll alert you.
Yeah.
So I guess that's just another type of reminder. I don't think there's any harm in it as much as we sort of make fun of it, but the advisories are coming out, and we're going to see a few in 6 months from now when they go, folks, remember, it gets awfully cold out there. Don't leave your kids in a cold car, or don't let it run. This is the natural course of repetitive reminding, right? We're going to see it. Sunscreen, make sure you take an umbrella, though that is probably the least used item in our province.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when I lived in Vancouver, it was a necessity, right? But
yes.
Here, I mean, you could live without your umbrella for sure.
Yeah, if you just stand under that awning for about 3 to 5 minutes, then the rain stops. Don't get me wrong, we've had a few that have been, hit us real hard, but it's kind of a rare thing.
Yeah, but it always happens in June, right?
Yes.
Rain. And then
you're right.
And then it's hot, July, August. So,
and speaking of hot, I don't know if you heard this, Lawrence. The new Ford, one of the new Ford trucks is coming out with a new police truck, and it's actually kind of interesting. They're always creating some modifications when it comes to, new trucks, and some agencies have built very specific police-oriented vehicles, and I think our officers in blue, they spend a lot of time in those vehicles. And I like to think that hopefully they're getting something that's comfortable, that's something that's safe. But one of the new things that's coming out is their self-vaccine or self-cleaning, in the sense that this new application, because when one officer gets out, the next officer could be getting in to start their period of time in the vehicle. They need it to be clean. Well, this comes like, not deodorizing, it's sort of sanitizing.
Yeah.
Goes up to 56 degrees.
Wow.
Celsius. And then sprays a bunch of stuff. And then essentially it, somehow the mechanisms inside clean it, and, it's available for the next person. But actually 56 degrees, Lawrence, you should try sitting in there when that thing runs. I'd like to know how hot that is.
Well, you could just go to Buffalo Wild Wings and do the hot wing contest, and maybe that's up there. I don't know. But
that's true. I guess I don't know how many BTUs the Buffaloes are. Let's start there instead, Lawrence. Instead of sitting inside that, which, folks, just like any of you, when those blue and red lights shine behind me, it doesn't matter how close or how far they are behind me, I am always a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to see that they're coming up with new products, because I hadn't really been thinking about that. But in my experience working for, fire department, these vehicles are always getting into it. So they're always requiring constant cleaning. Yeah, maybe this is a great idea that we're looking at these sanitizing.
Yeah, and I think it's
mechanism.
The same technology as a tanning bed, isn't it? Isn't those lights that they put out?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I've heard they do it on planes, and I think right when the pandemic was starting, they had all this technology for sale that you could just put a light in the middle of your room, leave the room for an hour, and then it's all clean of the
right. I think that's
virus.
Like ozone or ozonating. Yeah.
Yeah, but
yeah, I just sort of lean in with a little bit of Febreze and turn my head.
Yeah,
figure if that'll be enough.
But I was just gonna say, just go to a tanning bed if you really want to fight the COVID virus, and that should keep it away, right?
I haven't, it's been a long time since I've been, but I have. I remember when in my youth, where there was this preparation desire or getting ready for grad and or such, and you wanted to have a little bit of color on you. What usually happened to me was I was lucky enough to at least go skiing once or twice a year, and it was always like plus 30 on the ski hill, and you'd end up with the just burnt sunglasses or
raccoon eyes
ski goggles blistering all around. But it was proof to all of the other kids in school, I'm a skier. You can tell by the charred burns all over my face, the sunburns.
Well, I think it's cooler to be a snowboarder, but whatever. Skier.
Well,
snowboarder.
Didn't matter how many times I tried that. I got so beat up. I could not put that one together. I still Though it's been a long time since I've been on a ski hill, at least I can still manage that. Alcohol in parks. I don't know if Airdrie is doing this, but Calgary now has areas, park benches, not park benches, I guess, picnic tables that you can book for up to 2 hours. Though there's no garbages nearby, got to take everything you bring with you. Often there's no bathrooms nearby, but you can book it for 2 hours to go have a beverage. So I guess that's sort of their pilot project that they're exploring, common throughout Europe. And I think it's important, and it's not for me to speak because I don't want to be presumptuous about families and how they approach things, but the more exposure you get, the more you let your kids know that you need to be responsible. I have people who tell me all the time, Ross, you have to be responsible.
Yeah, like every 5 minutes, right?
Yeah, like 5 minutes ago on the podcast and on LinkedIn. You need to be responsible. You can't just write anything you want. Respectful, polite conversation. And yes, so hopefully this is a tool where we're going to start seeing the use, and we're going to get people back outside so that they're connecting.
Yeah, I mean, people are probably drinking in their driveways and their garages right now. Now they have a park to go to. So. Yep.
And as crazy as that sounds, I thought it was so wonderful when, you walk through your own community and you'd see people gathered. They're sitting on their front steps, and their friends or family are just sitting in their lawn chairs. It was instead of, because the rules were not there to allow us to be inside, they were doing their responsible duty, but still connecting. Yeah. Right? At the end of the day, this is nice that you and I get to see each other and we have our conversation, but it sure is nice when I get to hear your laughter as we're going on and on about our usual silly discourse on the squeaky wheel. But it is a heartwarming gathering, Lawrence, when we get a chance to talk in person.
Yeah, absolutely. I think maybe it's time to introduce our guest, if you can.
Yes. Yeah. Folks, thank you, Lawrence. We had a wonderful conversation with Dr. Samanani, who is the medical director of the Okaki vaccination clinic. So, folks, we want you to get a chance to share the time that we shared with him, his wonderful, wonderful conversation, and a successful program that he built, along with the engagement of Mr. Gauthier, of Mrs. White, of Mr. White, of all of the people who were supportive. Again, Lawrence, let's interject with that time now. Lawrence, I think that this is our opportunity, since we've been yammering a little bit about the vaccine clinic here and how excited, again, that I am. And for whatever reason, again, it's like the energy's right here that I'm keen about what's happening. But let's take this opportunity to invite probably one of the heavy hitters of the clinic, Samanani. Yeah, who, folks, you're going to see right away here is jumping on with the squeaky wheel with us. Sal, thank you for your contribution to the squeaky wheel, but thank you for your commitment to the community. Thank you to the citizens of all our First Nations, our Métis family and friends. Thank you to us as Calgarians, us as Albertans, us as Canadians. And though I would say further than that, but that's about as far as I can allow the limits to go. But Sal, before we jump into the clinic, and Lawrence talked a little bit about it earlier and how we got here and some of the success. One of the things that I find Lawrence and I really connect with people is a bit of their story of how they got to where they were. Now, you're a physician, you're the medical director of this clinic. Take us a little bit on the background of your schooling, because I understand it was, for a bit of it was in Alberta. And then I want to jump into some of those unique challenges that are happening. But take us just a little bit on peel back the onion of who Sal is. Everybody always gets to hear about us. And we have a strong Métis background, strong family background, we were learning. This is still a journey for us as we learn about Métis. But take us a little bit through some of the connections, because I know we're going to see spaces that are very similar. And then tell us a little bit about being doctoring.
Jeez. Wasn't expecting that, but
nobody ever is. That's how we connect with the community.
Tell us your life story here. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll just go maybe back to being a new immigrant here, right? I came here when I was 3-4 years old in the 70s, and as much as Canadians are, generally we like to believe we're a friendly, nice bunch. I would say that in the 70s, from early on when I was young, we certainly encountered quite a bit of racism. In the schools, just generally, whether it's culturally or, in your gatherings and places of worship, or even in the schoolyard. So I think those likely had an effect. I haven't really, until today, when you asked me this question, I haven't really thought about that, but I think that maybe factors a bit into wanting to support any groups that maybe experience, that feeling that they don't belong, or they're made to feel they don't belong. And with the First Peoples, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That, they do belong here. So anyway, fast forward, went through medical school in University of Alberta, completed, didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I went into this field of public health. And most people, with public health, they don't really know what that is or what it's about. They don't really know what a medical officer of health does. And I certainly didn't getting into it either. But now that the pandemics have happened, everybody, sort of knows. It's the specialties come to profile. And so, myself and my colleagues, this is one of the things that we do, is support pandemic planning and response. I think one of our partners is Calgary Catholic Immigration Society. I worked with them first. That was the first group really when I was finishing residency. I helped them set up their refugee health clinic, which is now at Mosaic. And I did that as a resident. And I remember at that time, just going to Faribors, who's the CEO, and his settlement director, and saying, okay, let's do this. And they just gave me a room in the basement of their settlement house. And we looked and used their interpreters and some of the patients as interpreters. And we just started. And that's where I kind of saw the power of partnership, right? The power of multiple groups just putting their mind together and trying to do something good together. And I think that's where probably my first taste of really working with other agencies. And through that, we had to work with nonprofit agencies, government, Citizenship, Immigration Canada, the health region, Alberta Health Services, Calgary zone at the time. So I think developed some of the experience and skills of understanding the different parts of the system and how they come together. And we really sort of did everything from payment and how you hire people and fundraising to just organizing and launching a program. So
before we jump into some of the next things, I just wanted to comment. I actually really appreciate that, it's very honest, the idea of bullying, the idea of struggle, especially as new immigrant. When I started this journey a little bit for myself, my dad was in the military, so I lived everywhere, traveled everywhere, and I'd get beat up every new place that I went. There's a difference between, to me, and folks, I already apologize if you feel offended by any of my statements, but of your reaction to bullying. It's never right. Sometimes there's bullying that happens because people are just trying to figure out who you are and maybe where the limit is. But we've talked about it on our show before. What is bullying? What is racism? Trying to get a better understanding. But it's such positive. Lawrence has taken a strong role in politics and connection with the community. I always love talking to doctors. I love talking to people who have achieved, worked successfully, achieved a lot. But I've also, my first question often comes from that point where I've met presidents of universities and such, and they'll connect within the Indigenous community. And I know they connect in all, communities. But I'll often ask them, why do you care about this group? And I'm not asking them to be rude, to try and challenge them too much, but a lot of times the stories are similar. In some cases, it's they saw bullying. Some cases they were bullied. In some cases they go, where they came from, it was a difficult time with those connections with those Indigenous communities. They saw it wasn't right. And I think it's a long journey still to understand all aspects of what is reconciliation. And I'm still trying to figure it out. Lawrence, have you trying to figure it out too?
Well, I mean, I have a fairly decent handle on what reconciliation.
Okay, good point.
Considering I was involved in a lot of the TRC commission talks and stuff. But my question is, how did Okaki and Sixica Health Services really get the handle on coming into Calgary to do something like this? And where did that begin?
Oh, great question.
Yeah. So, I started working with Sixica in 2000 and I think 2004 or 5.
You're that old? I would not believe it. So
yeah. So I mean, I've had a relationship with them, and in various capacities, clinical capacities, but also working on projects and initiatives for 21 or almost. I've known them for almost 16, 17 years. Worked there, 16 years. We actually Okaki works and supports 46 First Nations, so we have good relationships. But Sixica was one where, early on, had a quite a bit of involvement. So I think fast forward to the pandemic, Tyler, picked up the phone and sort of asked for our support and assistance, knowing we're public health people, knowing what was coming. He was good enough to sort of understand the challenges that were ahead and the team he needed to put around him. And we've spent up to December, that's 9 hard months dealing with a very difficult, cruel part of the pandemic that just takes things away from people, right? And so when vaccine came about, the connection here was Krista, his wife. Krista works with the Friendship Center, and I think she put Tyler and Shane together, and then Tyler dragged me along, and we had a discussion. I remember the first discussion. It was in March. I don't remember the exact date, but Shane sort of articulated the challenges for immunization and what the vision was. And certainly Tyler was working on that aggressively on Nation. And they had a lot of urban members, and they wanted to make immunization accessible. And we're immunization people. So yeah. I think that first day, I remember we had a chat. It lasted about 20 minutes. And everybody said, okay, we're in. And that day, I was over meeting with Shane just to sort of map out what a first stage would look like. So for me, it's just a no-brainer. I've been working with Indigenous peoples for 16 years. We are immunization people, and this is for the first time in a long time. It's something that will bring hope and bring joy, and I definitely wanted to be a part of that.
Great comment, because when I got my vaccination, which we were talking a little earlier about how wonderful this is. And it's wonderful because of the volunteers, the people who are putting it together, the success of this clinic. But I went through the AHS one. Folks, don't send me any hate emails about going through the AHS one, but you're walking past people that you're not supposed to pass. There's no real great organization. And maybe you could answer this. One of the funny thing was, I've been to the hospital in the last 20 years and I, my careers and such like that. I said, do you still live in St. Albert? When I was getting my Alberta healthcare, showing them my card. Not for about 25 years. Oh, we should update that. The system isn't perfect. This, though, gives me a lot of strength to see people who are engaging the community contributing. When you get a chance, how do you share this with other doctors? Are you getting phone calls? Are we interrupting a phone call right now where some other doctor's saying, this is a successful model? How do you share this model? Or is this part of how you share it with the community? Alberta Health should be looking at this.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the kind words. We're not really thinking about that.
Oh, okay.
We're just, and I would say the people who are coming forward are agencies that are trying to serve a marginalized group, and they're reaching out and saying, "Can you help us connect? Can you help us partner?" I think for us, it's simpler. if you come here, there's a purity about it. Everybody from, Eugene in the parking lot to the person sanitizing the chair, they own their role.
Yeah.
And there's this common mission where everybody just wants to provide the best experience, the most welcoming experience for every person that walks through this door. And it's just that simple. And when everybody from end to end is focused on that bit, then that's what you get here, what the feeling you get.
Folks, you can't see the smile underneath my mask, but the thing about good leadership is the humbleness that you brought to it. Yeah, you're allowing people to do their job, providing them the opportunity, and by the good grace of God, they're doing it, but they're also doing it because of something that you've built. So congratulations on something that makes me smile when I walk in here. This is fabulous.
Yep. And we don't want to hold you here too much longer because you are running a clinic today. And the first one will be here till June 11th, I understand. And we'll be, I'm sure, filming more episodes here. And maybe Sal can come in and tell us how things are going in the next couple of weeks. And we look forward to being here.
I would love to. Thanks, guys, for having me. And, just maybe some last comments is, I appreciate the nice words, but honestly, it's about people believing in what they're doing here. It's not really, I have to give a lot of credit to Tyler and Shane in terms of leadership, but at the end of the day, people have to believe in this. And, Lawrence, you joined recently, and I really felt, even last week, I felt there was a moment on Wednesday or Thursday where you kind of switched and said, boy, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in. And then once you believe in it, and once people believe in it, then the rest flows from there. So anyway, thank you.
Well, Dr. Samanani, thank you for letting me call you Sal, but it may be Dr. or Sal, one of you guys, when you go by, because thank you for your time here on the Squeaky Wheel and sharing that connection and your personal connection as well.
Awesome, guys. And my first podcast. All right. So.
Right on. Good well.
You bet.
Thanks, guys.
Again, I can't thank him enough, Dr. Samanani, who I think he's more than happy to just say, Lawrence, Ross, you can call me Sal, but I have the utmost respect for the efforts that he's put in. His conversation about, being an immigrant, his journey through his medical studies, his success wanting to work with minority populations. I enjoyed every bit of it. And Lawrence, I always enjoy every bit of our conversation, from the talking about the vaccines, as we all do, to talking about what advisories are happening, the things that are happening in our city. Thank you for that conversation. Maybe share the last little bit of comment between here on the Squeaky Wheel about what you think we need to concentrate on as we move forward, and the strength in the relationship with a gentleman like Dr. Sal Samanani.
Well, number one, I think it's a wonderful opportunity that we're a part and, listed as one of the big partners for the clinic. And because of our population is so urban, they, certainly lent an arm to us to come out to be a part of it. We're very happy for around the 30,000 Métis people in this area that at least access the clinic for vaccines, and to protect their families and for them to see their grandmothers and grandpas, again, and certainly be able to, as a family unit, to see each other over the summer. And, hopefully this doesn't hurt us in the September when the fall comes again and we don't see another outbreak, but at least we know that we're protected.
Absolutely. And folks, that harbors back to the fact we're all in this together. Don't be angry with those people who don't share your views, but be a part of the conversation. Be respectful of other people's conversation. I can't say that enough. Lawrence, again, I always enjoy our conversation. We're not always right, but we're always willing to talk about it. So thank you, folks, for listening to us here on the Squeaky Wheel. Make sure that you subscribe to us. Make sure you thank those nurses, those physicians who are out there. Thank the frontline workers. Thank all the people behind the scenes, the people who are struggling when their industries have been let down. Show your appreciation, and make sure you comment, reach out to us, ask us questions, and make sure you keep squeaking. Thanks, folks.